Deluge of abuse have been sent on X to prominent UK politicians in the election period. We're going to read into this more from The Guardian, you guys. Let's go. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, wherever you are in the world. This is Reganelite here with an article from The Guardian with the headline, "The deluge of abuse sent on X to prominent UK politicians in the election period. Rishi Sunak, Keir Starmer, Diane Abbott, Suella, Braverman and Sadiq Khan received between them 85,000 abusive message study finds." Guys, while you're here, make sure you hit the like button and share across social media so others are notified of this video. So let's talk a little bit about X, guys. So some of you don't use X at all. Some of you used X in the past, but don't use it anymore. Some of you maybe still use X, like me. So why do I still use X? Well, I still use it because it's outside of politics. Is a great way for me to engage with fellow wrestling fans. I don't really use it as much for politics like I used to. I still do follow certain political people. There is obviously I use X a lot for the Snowflake Watch live streams for those who watch along to that, because we get a lot of information, a lot of insight into that, which is really, really good. But I think for me, more than anything, the way for X, I feel it's very, very important to try not to get into to try to avoid discussions on X too much sometimes, because it can turn really negative very quickly. Especially on social medias, any social medias for that matter. But I just think since Elon Musk has taken over it, it doesn't have the same safeguards that it used to have. Definitely, there is a great deal of so-called free speech given a lot more on there than before. But I think what's really quite frustrating is that politicians or whoever gets abuse on X for whatever reason, and there's no real follow-up to it. There's no real action about it. Some people do get chased down for it, but the majority of people who do it, because they can say what they want behind the keyboard, they feel the need that they can get away with it. And this is a problem. It's something that Elon Musk and X really needs to get on top of, and they haven't really dealt with it. Formerly Twitter, for those who don't know. It's not right that these politicians... Now, I vehemently do not agree with some of the policies of Rishi Sunak and Suella Braverman, for example, of what they have done. I know a lot of people have a lot of hatred towards Keir Starmer and Sadiq Khan, and you can have fundamental disagreements with people. That's totally fine. But to shout and swear and have abusive language at politicians, when yes, they have it is what is an impossible job, and it's very easy for us to snipe at the sidelines to attack politicians when we've never been in their shoes and never lived in a life as a politician. But at the same time, the arguments that people will have is, well, Reagan, the reason why people are so snipey at them is because they have all this money, they have all this money, and they have this massive responsibility, and they can't do some of the simplest basic things. Some things are not as simple as basic as it may seem to us. It might be more complex than we can originally entail. But regardless, as much as I don't like Suella Braverman, I have qualms against West Street too. And, I think he's a I still think he's a terrible health secretary for Labour. But am I going to subject him to howls of abuse and foul language? No, because what's that going to accomplish exactly? What is me going on and shouting and swearing at Boris Johnson, for example, who, in my opinion, cost a lot of lives during the pandemic? What's that exactly going to achieve? So, you get to express and pull out your anger, but what does that accomplish? Is that going to change anything? Is that going to make people's lives feel better? No, it's not going to make people's lives feel better. And I think some people will say that some people are affected personally on a personal level, or they've lost a loved one by decisions made by politicians as well. It still doesn't give you the right to make abusive language towards any politicians, regardless of whether it's on X or on any other social media platform for that matter. And I say that, but there are lines that certain politicians, certain people cross as well. There is a line. I think that's important to highlight. It's hard to know sometimes where that line is. The UK's most prominent politicians were subject to a deluge of abuse on X during the general election period, one of the most comprehensive studies of online abuse in politics has found. So 5 politicians, Rishi Sunak, Keir Starmer, Diane Abbott, Suella, Braverman and Sadiq Khan, were between them sent more than 85,000 clearly abusive messages between the 1st of May and 30th of July, according to the findings from researchers at the University of Sheffield. The researchers initially looked at abusive posts towards 14 politicians in the spring, before narrowing the focus to the 5 most frequently targeted. They said the volume of abuse they recorded was likely to underestimate the reality if not all of it was caught by the study. Yeah, it's impossible to catch it all. So this is what they have here, this Guardian graphic here. So this is obviously from the research of University of Sheffield. It notes that posts on X relate to the accounts of Diane Abbott, Keir Starmer, Rishi Sunak, Suella, Braverman and Sadiq Khan. So it's only these politicians, this graph, so that's a really important point. Distribution of abusive posts on X to the accounts of those selected MPs between the 1st of May and 30th of July 2024 here. And you can see certain points where it really jumped up. I don't know obviously exactly the dates of when they are, but still, I mean, and it's got there the 4th of July there, but still, like the abuse between June and July obviously went much higher between May and June. I gathered obviously as we got closer to the general election, the frustration and anger obviously built up there. I mean, you can see after the general election, some of it has died down a little bit, but some of it is still quite high on certain days on those politicians there. Between more than 6% of all replies to Sunak, Starmer, Abbott, Braverman and Khan between May and June were clearly abusive. In most cases, these politicians will receive their first abusive reply within 1 to 2 minutes of publishing a post on X, which the researchers said was extraordinarily fast. Yeah, some people just happen to catch your tweet the moment you tweet something out, like literally seconds. The study monitors a range of abuses, messages ranging from milder posts branding politicians' lies to more severe abusing, including personal attacks and racist and sexist insults. More than 8,000 messages directed at 5 politicians contain the word liar, 3,000 of the word, I'm not going to say that, and 2,000 of the word criminal. Nearly 20% of the abuse was explicitly sexist, misogynistic, or sexually explicit. The top 10 topics of abuse are posted on X to the accounts of the selected MPs. Again, this is sourced from the University of Sheffield between the 1st of May and 30th of July. So the topics, the most of democracy, foreign affairs, tax revenue, border and immigration, UK economy, children and young people, public health, community and society, crime and policing, and employment. There's numbers there. So democracy, obviously the highest one. The most highest one there of abusive posts there. In examples highlighted to the researchers, Sunak, Khan, Abbott and Braverman were all subject to a racist abuse, including slurs such as being told to go back to where they came from. We've had that. It's just absolutely outrageous language. There was a clear increase in the overall volume of abuse throughout June while the election campaign was in full swing. Noticeable spikes occurring in the days leading up to the polling day on the 4th of July and in the early June in the first televised debate between Sunak and Starmer and the 80th anniversary of D-Day commemorations. Khan and Sunak received the most abuse of politicians monitored overall. Labour and Conservative politicians were targeted more or less equally. The 3 main topics seen in abusive messages were democracy, foreign affairs and border and immigration. Yeah, immigration obviously is the one that is exaggerated by the mainstream media more than anything. Our analysis shows very clearly in ways in which people vent their anger at world events such as Israel-Hamas war by lashing out at politicians as a way of finding someone to blame. We saw the same thing during the pandemic and events such as terrorist attacks, as Sheffield researchers had said. The sheer number of strength of racist comments towards politicians is terrifying. In a supposedly tolerant country like the UK, while any politician needs to have thick skin, those from racial minorities really need a suit of armour to survive those visual racial attacks from those who do not support their views. There were big spikes in abuse against Abbott in March, while The Guardian revealed comments made by the Conservatives' biggest donor, Frank Hester, and in June there was a row as to whether she could stand for re-election. The Labour MP, Hackney North and Stoke Newington, London, is a particular target for sexist and racist abuse in personal insults about her appearance and intelligence. Yeah, this was like she suffered this. She suffers torrents of abuse all the time, simply by the colour of her skin. Like, and I know she's not a perfect politician in any way, shape, or form, but like, what does her appearance got to do with anything? For example, there's just none. It's just none acceptable in any way, shape, or form. She told The Guardian there have only been on the end of huge amounts of abuse on Twitter X at the time of 2017 general election. The Amnesty investigation found one more online abuse than all other women MPs put together. One way of cutting back on online abuse would be though tweeters and users of online platforms could post under a pseudonym if Twitter and other online characters will retain their real name and address so they could be easily investigated. Yeah, that would... Having the social... that could be something that they could potentially do, especially on big platforms with politicians and whatnot, is that they could have the real names and real addresses, some personal info on certain platforms. You would obviously have to consent to do that. I don't know if people would be willing to do that, especially when there's other social medias where you can do that. You would have to make it a law to do so, to force social media companies to give that information to users. But the other thing as well it will do is some people obviously have multiple accounts on other social medias. That would well, would they still be allowed to have multiple accounts, I think, is another question as well. The University of Sheffield researchers were limited in their ability to track abuse against all politicians on X because it was bought by Elon Musk. The plaque revokes free access application programming interference, API. In 2023, Musk instigated a pay regime instead where equivalent data access starts at $42,000. That's $33,000 a month. While EU researchers qualify for free access data on X because of their provisions within the EU Digital Services Act, there is no equivalent clause in the Online Safety Act to benefit UK researchers. So I'll just level with you guys. So I actually have 3 X accounts. So I have my main account, which is linked in the links tree if anyone wants to have a look at that. And I have a second account, which is one specific for my outside of YouTube, outside of the non-news and political, is my wrestling content. Is that Twitter handle that I highlight on there. I actually have a third one, which is like a backup Twitter account to my original Twitter account that I have in case anything happens to my original one as well. So it would be interesting to see what I would have to do if I was to lose my main Twitter account, for example, how I'd respond to that. But I do think there is something there that could be used. I mean, we are just talking about X here, but obviously we can broaden this appeal more to all social medias as to whether it should be. And I don't think it's enough for the UK. Just again, it needs international cooperation to deal with this, because it's not just obviously British politicians in the election. Obviously in the US, American politicians get abuse all the time as well, and it's not just there. It's politicians of all different backgrounds. And there needs to be accountability from social media platforms to ensure that they are making sure that they go after people who are abusive and whatnot towards not just politicians but anyone in general who does it on a regular basis. Not enough is being done about this, especially on X. Obviously, I don't use Facebook, and while I do have Facebook and TikTok and whatnot, I don't use some of the other social medias as much as I could if I wanted to, but because I try to moderate my social media time, me personally. But it is different to obviously everyone about how much they mitigate that time on social media. Hence, I mean, YouTube is a social media platform in and of itself, because you guys are able to make comments down below and whatnot and create engagement there as well. So, but there is a lot more. There's a lot more control in terms of dealing with abuse and whatnot, from whenever I get abuse from people on YouTube, for example, as well. So that there is a lot more control and ways to deal with it as well, which is pretty, which I think is can be a lot better sometimes, than definitely can be better than X, for example. Well, what do you guys make of the amount of abuse that politicians received during the general election? Are you surprised? And bear in mind that study is only on 5 people, and we're talking about a wide range of politicians from lots of political backgrounds and whatnot. So the abuse is more than 1 million, probably, abuses that they've suffered, and many of them can just hide behind the keyboard and get away with it. So what do you guys think about the study? What do you guys make of some of the numbers that they received? Are you surprised by them? Do you think more needs to be done? I certainly should think so. And what can be done to help it? Let me know your thoughts and more about this story in the comment section down below. If you found this video interesting, please hit the like button. We greatly appreciate it. Share this across social media so others are notified of this video. And subscribe, because it really does help support the channel. And if you want to go one step further, financially support me and the work that I do here, you can do so by becoming a YouTube member for as little as 99p. Or join me on Rumble or Patreon for exclusive content on those platforms. So thank you all so much for watching, and I hope to catch you all very, very soon.